taking to the broadcast of It's Time with Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. Here's Reverend Martin.
Thank you, Dr. Blackwell. And let me say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but certainly never good night and never ever goodbye. I hate goodbyes from childhood, but that's personal trauma. My name is the Reverend Nathaniel Wayne Martin. I'm the pastor of the New Life Institutional Baptist Church. We're located at 8916 South Main Street in the city of Los Angeles. And the offering representation that you're viewing at this moment is entitled It's Time, and it's time to talk about justice and social justice and social equality. And if it was ever time to talk about it, my good friend, 'tis certainly now, in light of the climate in the country and the climate in the world. It's time to talk about social equity, while at least there's time to discuss the matter. For I feel we are plunging rapidly into a state of legalized anarchy, in which the group in power, which unfortunately tend to be categorized as white, are doing everything to cement themselves in that power paradigm, leaving the rest of the country and indeed the rest of the world in the oppressor or oppressed status. And the one thing we have going for us is that God is always on the side of the oppressed. God is always with the little guy. So we need to speak up and act up and be woke to the things that are occurring in and around us, in our communities, in our neighborhoods, and in our larger environment, which the Africana Studies people call the social structure, which is what the other people think about us. Social governance, what do we think about ourselves? And of course, movement and memory. How do we know anything? How to remember? What methods do we use to remember? How do we know anything? And the like concepts that pose any good Africana studies curriculum. And so my brothers and my sisters, as we are coming into the end of the month of November 2021, while I'm very much disturbed by the things that are constantly occurring and happening over and over and over and over repeatedly in our judicial system. Someone has wisely said, although of course they meant it only as a headline grabber, as a quip, in other words, that elections have consequences. But you can look at the Judge Schroeder on the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, and you can very plainly see what the consequences are of the people not knowing whom they are voting for, as other words, people like myself not knowing who they're voting for, because I usually go down the list. I say, I don't know none of these people, and just bam, 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 bam. But you can see the effect of not knowing. And again, I'm going to have to drink a little taste of water, because I do have a bit of a cough. I've been trying to kick it for 2 weeks, and I haven't got rid of it yet. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to sing again, because I've got this cough to contend with. Give me a second. I'll kind of help myself a little bit. Thank God for water. But we are in this dangerous area of history in the sociology of our country, in which we are being boxed in, much like Ahmaud Arbery, between a black vehicle and a white vehicle, and we don't have a weapon to defend ourselves with except our vote and our demonstrations, in other words, our feet. And if we don't make use of both of those very quickly, I feel that we too likewise shall be shotgun blasted to directly by a 12-gauge shotgun to the stomach, and that we too shall succumb to our wound, which is a very drastic analogy and a very drastic metaphor, but we must wake up to the danger that we are confronting, and that we are not as free as we assume, that our liberties are being curtailed, reduced, abridged, attenuated every waking day and every waking hour. Our voting rights are in danger of being suppressed again, and this time legally, as they were before in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. In 1898, in the Wilmington, North Carolina riot, or massacre, more correctly, it was done legally. And after they had made Mr. Manley shut down his press and give him an ultimatum to get out of town and don't come back, while the very same people who started the uprising and started the riot and the massacre installed themselves as the city fathers, as the legal heads of the city of Wilmington, and said the trains are running on time, or everything is all right, everybody go back home, there's nothing to see here. But there is a lot to be seen if one begins to pull back the sociological strata and look at the various causes that have brought us to the point of where we are at this very hour. And as I'm talking to you, the Kyle Rittenhouse case is over, and Mr. Rittenhouse has been declared innocent, meaning not guilty of any crime, even though he was underage at the time that he illegally took an AR-15. It was illegal for a 17-year-old to have an AR-15 or even to buy one. He took this AR-15 across state lines because he was in Minnesota, and he went down to Kenosha, Wisconsin, as he said, to protect his community. His community, of course, was just a buzzword, a dog whistle for the white community, because it certainly wasn't protecting the black community. Although in this instance, Mr. Rittenhouse wound up killing two of those who are considered to be white, Mr. Rosenbaum and Mr. Uber. And the third, both those gentlemen were killed, and the third gentleman, whose name I can't quite pronounce at this moment, were not black. But the cause of the protest, the demonstration, was because of the verdict that had come down in the case of the officer. Well, it wasn't even a verdict. The officer wasn't put on trial. He got his job back, having fired 7 shots point blank range into the back of Mr. Jacob Blake, a black man, and they shot him in the presence of his children, who were sitting in the back seat, and they saw their father being so abused and so molested and so imposed upon, and this has to have a lasting effect upon them for having witnessed such a traumatic event. But of course, the policeman had no such regard or concern, because those weren't his children. As we have been listening or studying or looking at Ephesians chapter 6, verses 11 and 12, we are not pivoting away from our emphasis on reparations, but no, we're just bringing in another further window of worldview by which to look at what we are wrestling with. All of these various organizations, all of these various companies, corporations, all of the various authorities. These represent, of course, principalities. Principalities get their authority from the powers. The powers a lot of time remain behind the scene, like the Koch brothers, excuse me, to name one. And for many, many years, we talked about the Rothschilds and the like, and we talked about the Illuminati and all of that. Well, those are a representative of the powers, the people who delegate the power, who have the power and delegate the power to the various organizations, companies, corporations, and all of the various manifestations. They're agents that are empowered to turn down your loan or to refuse you or raise your rent or anything. All of those things are done, as we say, as the Bible says, by principalities. The principalities are not the power, but they exercise the delegated power given them by the powers, quote unquote. And you have the power of the federal government, you have the power of the state government, you have the power of the county government, you have the power of the city government. And all of those have delegated powers to various agents, persons, individuals. It's no different than it was during the colonial era in this country, and it's no different than it was, excuse me, during that time, except that it is far more modernized, contemporary. It's much more refined, but the system continues to work to the advantage of the group that initiated that system. And when we say the system is not working or justice is not working, we're not really being, we're not actually looking at the context and the background in which that system was organized. Let me again remind you that this country started out with what Dr. George Grew calls an inherent contradiction. Thurgood Marshall and Dr. Derrick Bell called it a constitutional contradiction, and that was the acceptance of a clause in the Constitution that said in its organizing principles, that a human being, because of the color of their skin, because they were held to involuntary servitude or labor, was less than a full person, being only 3/5, and that's for purposes of representation in the Congress of the then 13 and their growing colonies. So the country itself began with a inherent conundrum or an enigma or a dilemma, and as Dr. Nell Painter said, it was all based upon money. It's all based upon money, because the money could be made from slavery by holding slaves, by promoting slavery, by trading slaves, and I mean big money. So even the founding fathers, those that spoke out against slavery, even they was seduced by filthy lucre to promote the peculiar institution, as it was so called, slavery the commodification of human beings in the nation that was being formed for the sake of advancing and enjoying and spreading and perpetuating freedom. It was not freedom for all. It was not freedom for the so-called black man, as we call ourselves now, or the colored man, or the Negro, as we were called at that time. But it was freedom to have slavery, freedom to hold people in bondage, in subjugation, and the like, and never to allow those people to be free again. You look at the Bible, Deuteronomy chapter 15 and verse 12, it says, "And if thy brother and Hebrew man or an Hebrew woman be sold unto thee, and serve thee 6 years, then in the 7th year thou shalt let them go out free from thee. And when thou sendest them out free from thee, thou shalt not let them go away empty, but thou shalt furnish them liberally out of thy flock, and out of thy floor, and out of thy winepress, of that wherewith the Lord thy God hath blessed thee. Thou shalt give, not sell, not loan, not allow them to borrow, or rent, or lease, but give, no strings attached unto them." And the chattel slavery that was practiced in this country, of course, was far removed from the bondage that was demonstrated in the scriptures, or in the Bible, or that was practiced by other cultures, other civilizations, and other nations. Chattel slavery meant that you had a personal, portable piece of property that happened to be a human being, and what you could do with that personal property, that movable property, that mobile property, whatsoever you desired or you chose by caprice or whim or decision or judgment to do with that property. And by the time we were getting up close to the Civil War, the United States government was not allowed to control, to regulate, or do anything that would impede, impinge, or affect slavery. As a matter of fact, with the passage of the Kansas-Nebraska Act, the Missouri Compromise of 1820 was voided or invalidated, and now the way was open for the slave holders, those who wanted to promote slavery, to take that slavery practice into all of the territories and into all of the states, irrespective of what the Constitution stated. What am I dealing with? What are you and I dealing with? I wanted to get to the Second Amendment, which is much in vogue in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and in Brunswick, Georgia, which is both of those are what you call open carry, or concealed carry states. You can carry your gun with you, in other words. And back to the origin of the Second Amendment, which says that a well-regulated militia being essential to the security of a state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Remember, it says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And a lot of times we fail to realize that in 1791, or 1789 rather, when this Constitution was first began to be sent out to the states to be ratified, that the people that were being referenced were not black people, not Negroes. We were not included within that we the people, as Thurgood Marshall so eloquently discussed in his bicentennial address, bicentennial of the Constitution address. We the people were we the white people, we the landed white people, not We the slave white people. the Second Amendment allowed the landed white people and those whom they delegated. Remember, you're dealing with principalities, powers, the rulers of darkness of this world, spiritual wickedness in high places, all of those things at work at one and the self same time. The growers, the plantation owners, naturally wanted to do what? Delegate the authority to carry guns or to carry weapons to only other people like them. And who were the people that were like them? Well, of course, there were other so-called white people. And they were the ones that were empowered to walk around with weapons, and walk around with guns, and walk around keeping the peace and making sure that and how did they do that? By making sure that the slaves were patrolled, controlled, regulated, surveilled, reconnoitered, and observed and monitored at all times. You see these three brothers, Mr. As an example, Mr. Greg McMichael, Mr. Travis McMichael, and Mr. William Roddy Bryant. They were doing everything they could to control, to regulate, to monitor, to limit, to reconnoiter the movement of Mr. Ahmaud Arbery in their neighborhood. They did a splendid job. They headed him off. They blocked him in, as they said in their own words. They cut him off, and eventually they wound up accomplishing their purpose, which was the death, the murder of Mr. Arbery. I say all of that to bring you to the point to realize that all three of these brethren who I have just mentioned are liable to be declared or to be found not guilty, because of the fact that the principle of the Second Amendment was for the defense and the protection and the advantage and the benefit of the people who wrote the Second Amendment to the Constitution, and the other 9 as well. And of course that would be James Monroe, James Madison, and the like. And it was not written to protect the slave. It was written to protect the landed party, the growers, the grower party, the grower class, which is another way of saying that the slave owner, those who traffic in slaves, to protect them from their commodities, their property that they said was so happy. And these are the realities that in 2021 we are still grappling with. In some ways we are less free now. As black people, we are in greater danger now than we were in 1789 because of the fact that the laws are still working as they were written for the benefit of those who originally drafted the law and drafted the legislation that became a bill that since has become the law. The principalities, not the the principalities, the powers, the rulers of the darkness of this world. That was a very apt metaphor that Paul used when he said the rulers of the darkness of this world. I mean, things are going on out of your sight, out of your hearing, out of your consciousness, that when they come forth from the darkness, they affect you immediately. And we find ourselves embroiled in laws, paying fees, dealing with restrictive covenants, dealing with voter suppression, dealing with the criminal justice system, dealing with the parole board, the probation department, the health department, the housing authority, all of these various manifestations of these principalities that are put there for 5 minutes to restrict the movement of the people who did not write the law. So, my friends, laws, elections have consequences. We have a little small window right now. You got Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and you got the squad there in Washington, D.C. You got, in California at least, we have Gavin Newsom. In Los Angeles, we have Mr. Garcetti. Right now, we have a progressive caucus. We have a progressive set of administrators in positions of power. That's going to go away shortly. And those that replace them are going to be far more retrograde and are going to be far less progressive, to say the least, than the people that are in power right now. And so, as we say, elections have consequences. If you look at how Ahmaud Arbery was controlled, and think of in the larger sense, in the national sense, how you likewise are controlled, then you know that you need to not only be registered to vote, you need to be voting, and you need to be making your displeasure and your protest and your objections heard in all the departments that you can, because you can see where this is going. These, like I said, these three fellows are just as likely to be declared not guilty as Kyle Rittenhouse because of the power structure. Who's in charge? It ain't me, and unless you're white, it ain't you. So then, as we get ready to wrap up, we must renew our prayers. We must continue praying. We must believe God. And as the children of Israel down in Egypt prayed for 400 years, but God eventually heard them, we too must pray that God will hear and send us a deliverance. We had deliverance under late Dr. Martin Luther King and the modern civil rights movement. We've had some success under the Black Lives Matter, but as you can see, your enemy is not giving up. And so as we wrap up our brief discussion, depressing as it may be, let it serve as a wake-up call to get busy, renew your studies of the scriptures, recognize that the person in front of you is simply representing a system, and that until that system is healed or changed or improved for the better, that we're going to keep on getting the same old thing that we've always been getting. If the police department started under slavery, then until we change radically the police department, we're going to keep on getting slave age enforcement. The people that are in power will get protection and service, and the people who are not in power will get police. All right. God bless you and may God keep you is our prayer. Again, to our laboring brothers and sisters, it is a time to speak up. It is a time to join together like the people at Kaiser and to make the powers that be give you the concessions that you need to have, that you must have in order to remain human and to maintain your dignity and to maintain your benefit. And labor is valuable. Once you put out your labor, you cannot get it back. And your labor is very expensive and is the most valuable thing that you have. And always, I say again, I continue to say, if they don't want to pay you, don't work for them. Thank you, Doc. We're out of here.